Hi, welcome back. Paul Gerard from Price Accounting Services here in this video in our SMSF thread to discuss the issue of trustee choice. Look, this is a complex but very straightforward issue, and I want to leave you with a message here to ensure that you understand there is a choice, but that choice is really only one choice. So let me explain the trustee choice issue with SMSFs. A self-managed super fund can have either human trustees or a company as a trustee, and the initial deed will appoint on that basis. Now, human trustees certainly appear cheaper, and you often see SMSF spruikers and administration companies that try and flog cheap services. They will often, for example, market a free SMSF or set up or whatever. Now that's only going to be with human trustees. So what they're doing is they're driving the demand based on low cost, and there's nothing wrong with low cost, but the low cost comes with a severe problem. I want to explain all those issues so that you understand it and why I just do not recommend SMSFs with human trustees. Okay, so let's go through, start at the beginning with the trustee choice, and so that you're well armed with the knowledge. So in the SIS Act, the definition of SMSF refers to the number of members electing to be a regulated SMSF, etc. Then it contains rules which deal with the type of trustee, and it's sort of a twofold choice. So the human trustee choice says that a SMSF with human trustees must have more than one. So an individual member cannot have an individual trustee as a option. It's not permitted whatsoever. They then must have an additional trustee who must be equally involved in the decision making. And commonly, if that's a spouse, there's probably less overall concern, but other matters follow. So the issue can arise on the death of a member. So on the death of a member, next thing you've got the executor, who may be the spouse or may not be. They might not have a will, and you've got all these control issues over the spouse being that additional trustee, and then you've got other people. Now, the additional person, you wouldn't, for example, really want to have an adult child. There's a famous legal case in the nature of Spry. Spry's decision was quite a poor outcome for the protection of a member's estate, because the courts had to follow the law, the common law principle, and it found that when the member had appointed the daughter as that additional trustee, she was a little bit of a smart girl. She'd studied law, and she perhaps knew that she would have choices to make beyond that of her siblings. So she basically made the SMSF death benefits payable to herself rather than to the estate. Nice piece of work, really. So human trustees come with succession problems. Succession in terms of not just death. Death's a fairly evident problem with succession, but also incapacity. So a single member fund with two human trustees, if one became incapacitated, only the other would be able to manage the fund, and quite legally can affect, influence, manipulate and do things, and provided they haven't breached the member benefits completely, it might be beyond the scope of a court and even very costly to pursue. So that's the basics of the human trustee. The other alternative is a company trustee. Now, a company trustee comes with a very clear benefit. A company will always be the trustee. So a company doesn't get sick, a company doesn't lose capacity, and so mere changes to who the directors are all that's required. So for example, if you add a member to a SMSF with human trustees, you must amend the deed. Then you have to open new bank accounts in the name of all human trustees. Then you have to change all your investments in all of the human trustees. So it's very costly and very problematic. And I've encountered this request many times by lenders, banks, and even auditors who will detect the issue and raise a serious concern if, for example, you've got 3 members to the fund after previously being 2. Everything has to change. New bank account, you can't just change the name. So, a bit of a pain. Whereas a company trustee, the company always remains the trustee through a death of a member, through illness, and all sorts of other people issues. The company can add another director, can remove a director. You can even have enduring power of attorney and have alternate directors, so that, for example, we've seen this with members who might go overseas for a period of time. The company continues to be the trustee with, for example, an additional resident director who may be a parent under an enduring power of attorney. And it's easily resolved. Also, your investments are always in that company name, and arguably it's very hard to confuse personal investments with that of the SMSF, because the name everything's in is in, for example, Smith Family SMSF Proprietary Limited as the legal custodian of all investments and bank accounts. So it's pretty hard to confuse one with the other, whereas an individual trustee, your investments might be in the name of Smith, Mr. and Mrs., and Mr. and Mrs. Smith then received 2 CHESS statements, both in the same apparent names, excepting one says in brackets SMSF, the other one doesn't. So we do see some audit issues on those occasions. So I guess my warning here is don't cheap out and avoid getting a company as a trustee. Also, if you're ever considering a borrowing, you must have a company as a trustee. We've seen this many times where people go and they'll form an SMSF on the cheap, having seen something online, and then they approach us and say, hey, look, I want to do a borrowing. My broker says there's a bit of an issue here. What do I need to do? Then we need to amend the deed, which costs more than the original deed in the first place. Then we need to also look at a formation of a company. So you're adding a layer and a lot of extra work. You've got to redo all sorts of documentation like trustee declarations. So it's best avoided from the scratch. So I hope that better arms you with my views, at least, on why a company as a trustee is always the best option, despite the slight additional cost. Okay, so I hope that's been informative, and I hope you enjoy some further videos in this series on this channel, and then follow on and watch more. Cheers. Thank you.